Thank you so much for being with us today again. Very, very happy to do this for the 5th year, Europe Voices of Women in Film with the Sydney Film Festival. And we can only do it thanks to the support of the Creative Europe Media Program of the European Union, and also thanks to Eurimages. And we are super happy to cooperate for the very first time with the European Women's Audiovisual Network to look at gender ideas and how they consciously and unconsciously affect our film work. We are very happy to have Jo Mühlberger with us again today, the Deputy Director of European Film Promotion. And now a very warm welcome for Tamara Tatishvili, who had been with European Film Promotion actually 9 years, who is the strategy manager of the EWA network, and who brought forward Georgian young national talent when she had been director of the Georgian National Film Center. And what can I say? What a beautiful day to have with us Teona Strugar Mitevska, a longtime friend, very dear friend of European Film Promotion. She had been involved in many European Film Promotion projects. Thank you so much for taking your time, for being with us, for talking with us. And now the floor is all yours, Tamara and Teona.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Andreas. Today I was feeling so relaxed and even more enthusiastic to come back after yesterday's reunion with the directors that are selected for the program this year. And also it was yesterday that I realized that not provided the situation we found ourselves in, of course, not many of you have yet seen each other's films. And I think that this meeting, one of the good reasons also for this meeting is to try to transform what's given as a reality, that we cannot meet physically, that we cannot have this wide exchange, which would be very normal to happen in Sydney with the beautiful crew of European Film Promotion, that would make it really, really special for you together with the festival team. I thought there is this one good, very strong reason to get connecting and get to know who we are, what we're doing, what are the films out there, and special welcome, of course, to Teona, who, apart from being, I dare saying, rather established director already internationally, coming from Macedonia, and in my view, having a very interesting cinematic signature to all the films that you've done so far. You also had the privilege of being in action in Sydney as a participant of the Voices of Women program back in 2017, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. And I think it's some sort of a balance that is called life, that now you are meeting all your peers that have to deal with the same a beautiful selection, but have to do it on Zoom. But I take it for 3 months of been doing all sorts of activities in this virtual world. I've learned one lesson. You can turn anything into an opportunity if it makes sense and if you know what you're doing. And yesterday I was so fulfilled from the comments I got from the great women on screen right now that I felt, no, we're really going through that process. And very soon we will meet in persons, and it will be like a meeting of really good collaborators. So that's the message I can convey to everyone. Though I do not want to paint a beautiful picture, and being on site would be, of course, much better, but we're still strong together somehow right now. That's how I deal with my own work as well. And before I try to navigate a little bit your professional story, Teona, and how you are facing the blank page, so to say, when you start thinking of your stories you want to tell cinematically, and the characters that are always very important in your films, I thought sharing with you a little bit of a roadmap to who are the people and what are the films selected this year. I had the chance to watch them all. It was a beautiful journey. I don't want to say that, we all have different taste in cinema, but when you work in this field and when you're extra passionate, you look on one piece of art, but then you also look at the selection together. And what they've brought, I think, in 2020 is a very, very daring mosaic, really, because you have all sorts of genre. You have feature, you have documentary, you have a very solid attempt of finding the thin line between what's expected as a preconditioned action from a character, but how naturally this can unfold totally in a different manner. And all this is not done in a pedagogical way. There is no artificial element. All those characters in these films are like really naturally unfolding, and you start to feel sometimes weird, sometimes just lovely. You follow the stories which you really stay with you. And I think this is a compliment to the festival, to the European film promotion, and everyone who's been involved. So for instance, a film titled A Perfectly Normal Family, Malou, I think, yeah, she's here. It's just such a fresh look on a story of a family and on a young girl who has to live with the fact that her father is in need. A human being is changing a gender, and it's not the typical story of what this transgender journey would be, but you look at it from the perspective of a child who really needs to be childish, has to have a smile on her face because she's young and she's embracing the life. But on the other hand, with all the emotional struggle she needs to go through, it's a complete achievement. Then you have an year full of drama, Marta. I was thinking, how many hours did you spend with your heroine, I would say, this blogger who watched over 200, I think, plays of theater, and you really see, you get so much of her, and you understand how she's coming of age or finding herself, her own character, and waiting off things that she doesn't need in her life. Then you have a charter by Amanda. She's not here, no, but it's a very daring story of a mother, a divorced mother, and looking into the family construction, but also, even though she wants to connect to her children so badly, she's also totally aware that there is a line when she cannot cross and fully sacrifice herself. Force of Habit is a manifesto of its kind. There are 7 directors, and they are really telling a very complex canvas of sexism, violence, what human beings, women, have to go through, and if it's possible to capture it even emotionally or not. Kids Run, Andreas, it's the only one, no, with a man somehow, with a male protagonist, but you just get so troubled and so moved with this personality. Another totally different look on a parenthood. And actually the guy, in my view, who has no words, and he's so incapable physically for emotion, but so much comes out of him that is not said, but is acted, and it's called love, that I was really, really very moved. Lessons of Love is also a documentary that made my evening when I watched it, because it's a story that is of love and joy, of a woman who wants to be happy after, I think she's over 70, if I'm not wrong, and she's really combating everything on her way to find even a true love somehow. And it's just cinematic joy to watch that. My Little Sister, also by Stephanie and Veronique, a self-discovery, I would say, of a mother, of a sister, of a daughter and how you deal with that, but also how you can reveal yourself with the problems in your family and get artistic inspiration at the end of a very, very tough journey. There was Sea Fever by Neasa, psychological thriller, very different, throws you into reality that you cannot let go, with a powerful performance. I happen to know Brandon, your producer, Neasa, and I was just so happy to see what beautiful work you are creating together. They call me BABU. Sandra, that is now in a corner, hiding in her summer house, I think, or holiday house. I thought this documentary is a historic act somehow, because you really, I'm sure it wouldn't be easy to find those and to make people hear what they are saying and how BABUs, I don't want to give the whole spoiler, were treated and what were their emotional journey and what happened historically. And then there is Zana by Antonetta, who is now in LA and is on our screen, a film coming from Kosovo. And that is really a very fine portrait of a post-war reality, trauma, what's expected out of women, but where is the line? And all this together, Teona, I think you want to watch all the films probably now, but all this really created a program when I thought, well, this is non-sensational act towards combating gender stereotypes. You know, as simple as that. It's an action these filmmakers are taking in a very artistic manner to make audience understand what are we talking about when it's about stereotyping, preconditioned realities, and the influence of social conceptions. And now I come to you because I knew your works way before I get to know you personally, but now, of course, we've spent time talking and we know each other, because you are a very interesting woman coming from Macedonia, certainly not the country that is at the heartbeat of power productions and, high in production volumes, but you really made your way internationally, always coming with a story where you try to dig into the role of a woman in Balkan, I would say, let's say, in Macedonia, but in Balkan reality, because that also relates very much to South Caucasus, if you ask me, and many of the post-Soviet realities. You mostly and foremostly place women as key driving force in your stories, and you make them do all crazy things probably that some of your male commissioners would think, because you really constantly challenge the deeply rooted masculinity, in my view. You don't want to know if the roles are pre-aggregated. You want to have a character who jumps into water and gets the cross out and totally destroys the religion connotation of a tradition in Macedonia. On the other hand, you are building a group portrait of youngsters who really need to understand what is a malfunction of a tradition, but what's also the informed way forward. And you've started with a short film, if I remember correctly, Veta, which was already brought to Berlinale Film Festival and got a special jury award. And soon after that, you've made a film called How I Killed a Sant. I don't know how you are coming up with all these titles, to be honest, now that I revamped a little bit my memory. That already placed you in a what programmers often like to say, you know, a new talent emerging from a complex territory. I heard it many times in my work. And since then, you've been really evolving and making your work more and more complex. What I would like to hear from you for the beginning, before we go to the concrete titles, because all the titles and trailers are available online, we should not lose time on that, is where is this drive coming from to really to put yourself as a filmmaker who challenges the conception and the tradition of the country, or I would say broadly the reality where we're all coming from? Was it an informed urge, or you developed it?
Well, I think in a way it's both. I often say frustration is my drive. So whatever frustrates me, has frustrated me in the past, whatever gets on my nerves, whatever I don't understand, I try to decode and understand. And in a way, each character in my films, and each of my films, it is maybe a certain release of certain frustration I have gone through or lived through. You know, we talk about roles, gender roles, you know, or expectations that stereotypes, what it means to be a woman in the Balkans. You know, Judith Butler, she talks about we all in a way play a role of a male or a female. And I've never understood this, why my tradition, why my upbringing, why my where I have grown up, why I'm conditioned to act in certain way, and therefore my character has always been a mirror to this. So they try to, you know, pose the questions, break the status quo, and sort of try to define themselves differently, or try to define themselves the way they want to be defined. And basically, that's the core of each of my films. But your question was where the drive comes from. You know, it is a mixture. It is maybe upbringing. I come from a family of women, very matriarchal sort of upbringing, yet we are brought up in the Balkans with very, very strict patriarchal rules of what are you supposed to do and how you're supposed to be. So yes, it is, I guess it is all about rebellion, because only when we rebel, only when we bravely pose the uncomfortable question, we can move the society forward. And for me, art and the function of art and the function of my films is exactly this, to sort of move humanity forward, to contribute.
And on that note, I just captured you going, for instance, to a national state financier with a film called I Am for Tito Vele. That is very, you know, was also a very strong film that shaped your name internationally, or Woman Who Brushed Off Her Tears. Was it easy in the beginning to go with those scripts and get support?
No, it's never been easy. And actually, it doesn't get easier. I always think with each film I make, I say, okay, you know, this film, maybe it will have a success, and next film will be much easier. And actually, it never gets easier. And it's very strange. But actually, I'm happy about this, because somehow, when you are sort of labeled as unbankable, you know, that means you know what is unbankable, or when you don't follow the pre-established rules in the way you tell the stories, in the way in the way you tell the story, it is when you are not part of the mainstream, it is always, I don't know, yes, you're not always the first choice. Also, when you come from a place like Macedonia in the Balkans, a place that, yes, we are a democratic society, but we are still sort of learning the functions of what democracy, a true democracy is. So yes, it's always been a struggle. So to tell you the truth, I wouldn't know how to do a film differently. If somebody would give me money and say, make a film, maybe I wouldn't. Well, maybe it's a stupid thing to say, but I have learned how to function between the around and between from the back. So when you are not on the top of the pyramid, you have to learn how to function differently.
Yes. But you have the whole family structure. I think it's also a very interesting producing, let's say, vehicle that you have, because you are two sisters and a brother, right, that are behind the company that produces all of your films. And also Lavina, your sister, is not only a producer, but we see her very often as an actress in your films. There is this I don't know, sharing of tasks and responsibilities, and being a team, being also a family. Your brother is working on the set with you. He's part of the crew, right? So how come? I mean, how come this evolved as some sort of a family business model of dealing with stereotypes?
Yes, we didn't have a choice. That was not something that it was not a decision, okay, we will pass our life together and we're going to make art together. Not at all. It was sort of a force of circumstances. When I went to school, to graduate school in New York, NYU, and when I was doing actually Beta, my short film, I returned to Macedonia to shoot the film, and I'm certain you're all women. I'm certain that some of you have gone through the same sort of. People just didn't take me seriously. I came, I said, I need to make a film. I have this budget, blah blah blah. Just my crew was producers wouldn't. None of Macedonia's producers would take my film to produce it. So then, since nobody wanted to produce it, I asked my sister, who was an actress, I said, please, can you produce the film? She said, how can I produce? But basically, we did not have a choice. And then, as we started making films, we realized that actually when we are together, we are stronger. So it was a way to protect and support one another. The same thing as what we are doing right now, women together trying to be solidarity. But for us, it was the family that was a way to function in a predominantly actually surrounded by a male crew in a very muscular industry. Me as a woman, a girl of 26, my family was my protection. And then we developed this professional relationship, and everybody took their role within this structure.
So it sounds like you also learned via doing, right? I have exchanged with Andreas on this just in our private chats on this family and community feelings, put it that way, that is quite strong in a, I don't like to call it smaller countries, but with countries with lower capacity, with political complexity, where you really need to first find the rationale for the state, the whole mission of the country and how it is discovering itself and then go into cultural policies and all the other that shapes the agenda of the state. And I thought that also when I watched Zana by Antonetta, you also work with your sister, right? Your sister is the cinematographer of your film. And you mentioned yesterday, and I also saw it somewhere online, that you have this feeling of that now it's the moment in Kosovo. Now there's something happening, that young talent is getting organized, and you have this feeling that you are supported in making your cinematic voices be heard. Would you agree to that? You need to unlock your yeah.
For sure. I mean, from early on, we were doing documentary films. We started in 2002 and created a company, and we were kind of doing it on our own. So we never really had to deal with men not letting us do what we wanted to do, you know, and we were finding ways to make our films. And once we came to LA and studied, and we made short films, and then somehow, like, because the changes that were happening in the film fund, because we had more progressive people, and there is this wave of films that is coming from there that are from female directors. So there's definitely that kind of support, you know, because they're trusting more younger directors. And then on set, you know, it has to do with choosing people that respect you. And as a director, it's easier. If you have a producer or the top people that are supporting you, then you don't need to. Like you can, you know, of course my sister had to deal. She's shooting a lot of films in Kosovo. She's like shooting a lot of the films by female directors.
She shot The Marriage as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. And there are ways in which, but somehow I'm not so much when I'm on set, because we're just making our own film, and I choose the people that we work well together, you know, and we make it. Yeah. What was the question?
Yeah, thank you. No, it just very much reminded me also a case in Georgia back in time when I was in Georgia National Film Fund. That's year 2010, 2013. There we had 2 or 3 debuts that really, like yours, Teona, made it to Berlin and then traveled over 50 festivals and somehow made trades and industry talk about the revival of a Georgian tradition. Mostly they were done by couples or by relatives, and there would be a lot of family members and a lot of extended family, put it that way, because we are not short of chaotic, noisy family traditions either in Georgia to really kind of fuel it in and bring it forward. And that's I think is also relevant to countries where you have not only male dominance. I would not simplify it with that. I think this is also a social structure where you have a structured understanding who deserves what. And I know sometimes, Teona, you call them gods, that gods are deserving something and you are not allowed to be in competition with them.
You're talking about death to the gods.
Yeah.
I think every country has a god in cinema. And yes, death to the gods who think everything is due to them. I'm talking a little bit.
Yeah, but you also, even though you said it's a way of frustration for you, but you also you're managing well your frustrations, let's put it that way, because it makes you a very very interesting director. And one particular question I would want to ask is your relationship or your take on the religion as such, because if we look into your film God Exists, Her Name is Petrunya, but also all the other films that you did, you know, they always have this there is this drive, this energy where you want to question a little bit what's hidden behind the curtain of religious tradition and whether this is healthy or not. And when you have this your fantastic actress jumping on this cross in the film Petrunya, and then all the rest of the absurd that comes out of it. I think it's one of the most powerful films that you've done, really, because it really unfolds on all levels. So why do you take such a stand with this topic?
Because, you know, we are who we are because of the place we come from. You know, our history and our tradition does inform every pore of our body. So for me, I call it often, this is unfortunately our imprisonment also. So interesting component in this, especially for Petrunya, is okay, you are who you are. We are defined by our tradition. But how to not throw away the tradition, but how to redefine it in order to come out on the other end differently, better. How to not lose our history, and how to use it, continue with it in a more constructive way. So because I come from a place where tradition is so heavy and is so, I don't know, it is our biggest impingement. Impingement is a French word, sorry. It is our biggest
impatience, you want?
No, it's not
No?
Impediment.
Religion is our biggest impediment, maybe?
Impediment, yes.
Impediment, yes.
On all levels, you know, and here I'm not talking about men, women, I'm talking about the whole society. When you look at When the Day Had No Name, it is a film that talks about six young boys that cannot define themselves any differently than being macho men, which is their tragedy. So of course I talk about this horrible baggage that we all carry on our shoulders, and I try to understand it and try to I guess I try to understand it, because I think the only way forward is by understanding. More you understand,
Yes.
better you can define things and redefine things.
And this was that's very
where
sorry.
you are in order to know where you want to go. So
It was mentioned yesterday. Sorry, your voice is sometimes cutting, so I not that I want to interrupt you, but it was mentioned yesterday here also by some of us that this is a process. You cannot like order a change and get it next day in your mailbox, to simplify it very much, or you cannot really expect that this is going to happen overnight. And to allow this process, like you said, and to understand, like it is in psychology, when you face it, even in the biggest fear and the threat, then you get the energy and the force to navigate away from that. And that's the choice that one will do and others won't, not to paint a very ideal picture here. So if any of you on screen are willing to contribute, to have a comment or a feedback or just ask something, please just feel free or wave a hand, whatever is possible here online. But as you mentioned, your film...
Tamara?
Yes?
Something? Because
yes.
When you started it with, the gods.
Yeah.
I just want to add something just very quickly.
Yes.
When we are talking about gods of cinema, I'm not saying that I want to be, or any of you, we want to be gods of our country's cinema. It's not about being God of a cinema. It is about creating just distribution and opportunity for all, men and women alike.
Yeah, equal.
Exactly.
So very simple, actually, if you look at it
Yeah.
from management perspective, even. You mentioned the film When a Day Had No Name, and I would like to go a little bit towards the way you work on a script writing level, because that is also the development stage, and that's I find it a fascinating moment when you are in development, and I love in general reading scripts. So when you see those different scripts and how things change and evolve, and you're losing one character but obtaining the other, that is way more much richer and diverse. But I know that you are working, at least on that film, you started collaboration with, you have a collaborator, co-writer, Elma Tataragic. Some of you may know her from Sarajevo Film Festival. Is she still EFP? Okay, well, she's an EFP representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Yeah, a very interesting woman, very multi-talented, I would say. So I'm wondering, how come that you are embarking on those storytelling together? Where did you find each other, and how is this process organized?
No, writing depends to who, but for me, the writing process is the most difficult for me. I was trained as a director. I'm not really a writer. So for many, many years, since my short film, I tried to collaborate with people. So I collaborated with many writers, and sort of it never clicked, because collaboration is like a marriage, a good marriage or a bad marriage. And then after many tries by my producer, who is my sister, Elma, she said, why don't you try with Elma? And we tried, and we clicked, all of a sudden it was just like wonderful romance. And we haven't stopped since then. We are developing, now we are in pre-production for our new film, so it is our third project we will do together. And it has been actually this collaboration of writing together, it has been a very humbling experience for me, because actually I've learned to put my ego aside, my big ego, and to sort of think about the project and the characters we are following and portraying, and not. I think that's the only way a true collaboration can function, when you put the egos aside and you sort of do the dance together. So we have managed to do this we are managing to do this with Elma, and it is really, really incredible. The way we work is one writes 30 pages, the other writes the next 30 pages, then the other writes 10 pages. So it's never about measuring, it is all about inspiration, and whoever feels up to it. So it has been a good ride, yes.
Yeah, and that kind of turns me now, while you were talking, into two other films here in the selection, like Lessons of Love, for instance, where you also, as I understood from yesterday, the producer and the two directors been working very close together, right? It hasn't been like, it's been like a team embarking on the journey and protecting the character and also taking most out of this. Is that so? Would you be willing to contribute?
Yeah, hi.
Or Kasia? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah, we were a team of 3 women, 3 girls, and for all of us, it was the first such a serious project. I mean, the feature-length documentary. So I had the feeling that we are doing the same film, but we are different from each other, and we can support each other in places or conditions when when one of us feels stronger, then this one can, you know, lead the team, yeah. And it was a constant change through the process of making this film, which took us four years. So it was a great experience to work in this team of three strong girls, and have, you know, we kind of discovered our own language and our own way of work. Of course, we had a lot of weaker situations, but generally when we were entering some shooting or some kind of workshop on our road, we really felt like a great team of three women, some kind of like three musketeers, yeah. So the experience was great.
Across in your project, actually, because it also blends so well with your the protagonist and what's happening there. It's very, very interesting. And I'm also looking at the directors of My Little Sister, because that is also an artistic collaboration. I don't know if you would be willing to tell us a little bit how you worked together on this complex family structure and the amazing lead that you have in the film.
Yes. So hello. Just our particularity is that we are not sisters, but we have known each other since we are 10 years old. So we were. Do you hear as well?
Yes.
Okay. Because we have some Wi-Fi issues. And we've been working so for years. We come from theater, we are actresses. So first we would do shows together. We were a duo, a comical duo on stage. And then we inserted some movies in our shows. So we have really a special background, really coming from theater. We didn't do any film school. And we really came to movie by doing films. So then our collaboration is really when we write the first feature, we wrote it together, but this one, My Little Sister, our second one, it's a story of a carer, of a woman who's taking charge of her sick brother. And I would experience that my mother got sick while we were writing the movie. And I would be the carer of her, so it was impossible for me to go in the writing. So Veronique would be really the main writer of the story, and then she happened to lose her father while we were writing the film. So it was really a very complex period and difficult. So the writing was more Veronique writing, and I would read and give impulse or give my feelings, because some scenes are really exactly what I lived with my mother. So in this sense, it was a very special experience. And then on the set, we really are, we don't decide who speaks to who. We are always together, and we are really living the moment really on the set.
Yeah, tu vois, c'est tu que je parle, merci. So, okay, I take the lead now. Yeah, it's a constant dialogue with Stephanie, but we know each other so well that it's very quick when we are on the set. It's we can feel, oh, today I had a feeling with that actress, so I'm going to be closer to the actress today, because I really can feel the scene with her. And maybe Stephanie will go to the crew, to the technical crew but just for one scene, and then we change. And we always want to be very flexible and in this improvisation mood, so that nothing is settled, nothing is written and fixed. And that's why it's very lively all the time. And we need this actually, and we love it. But I think that the first thing is that we trust each other so much, and we have the same vision, because we know each other so well, and also that we work a lot before on the script and at what we want to feel, to watch, to see, and that's why when we are on the set, we can be so much, I would say, sur le moment, on the moment.
Living the present of what is happening on the shooting.
May I say something? Sure. I admire this idea of this freedom of being able to accept improvisation. It is something I dream to do. I was traumatized in my 2 films that I must control everything. I must have everything storyboarded to a point that it's sickening. And it is my life dream to be able to do what you're doing, to allow myself to accept this improvisation.
But still, it's not improvisation with
just the dialogue is really written, and we kind of stick to the dialogue, but we don't storyboard. We play the scene. What we do, we go on set like on Sunday when no one is there. We go and we really do that. We act the parts and we prepare the mise en scène of the scene.
Yes. Right.
And then we propose the scene to the actors, and we rehearse with them, and with the DP we do the movements of the camera. So it's not storyboarded, but we are very precise on the intentions of the scene, the dialogues. So it's not that the actors will start a 15 minutes improvisation, because we really know what we want, but we don't storyboard because we had no time. The preparation of our movie was so difficult. We didn't know where we would shoot. We would lose a location during the shooting. So you all know that. But really in this film, it was really a miracle after the other, because we lost important locations we had to find during the shooting. So it was really, we couldn't storyboard like crazy because we didn't know where we would shoot.
Yeah, that's another angle of the puzzles that we need to put in place, probably in filming. And as we spoke a lot about the young, this change that is needed, the change that needs to be informed, and you should go through the process when you understand what is the tradition and then also what is the malfunction of that tradition. The bias, the stereotype is, we all have it, right? We are all confronted with it, and we need to face it and then probably divert away from that. And that happens on a very, very young age already. And I was thinking now, as you all spoke, I was looking at Marta, who also has a young, she's following a young woman, I would say, right, Marta? Who's apart from watching theater, she's also having a lot of questions of the life and her belonging, and what does she want to do? What sort of journey did you have with her as an artistic collaboration? How much time did you spend together? You need to probably take off.
Okay. Do you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Hello to everyone from me as well. So just as a quick intro, my film is about a girl who took on this strange human experiment where she had to watch every single theater play that comes out in 1 year, and who had never been to the theater before. So it was a question about how art can transform her life. And I've enjoyed our conversation today, and especially yesterday, a lot, because it invoked a lot of questions in me and made me very interested and curious about watching your films. And about the biases, that film confronted myself with a couple. First of all, as we were selecting the character, as this documentary kind of involved a casting, what I was surprised to find was that I myself was imagining a male protagonist with no reason why it should be so. That casting process happened now almost 3 years ago, so and definitely it has changed, but it's so strange to find that reflex within yourself as well, of why am I looking to find a male character to tell a story of 90 minutes. And the other one that Alessia was confronted by, was my main character then, was not so much about gender, but mostly I think about social position and the background, the very working class background that she came from, where a lot of people were strangely surprised that she might also have a brain, which I found puzzling. But over coming to your question, Tamara, is
Yes.
that it was a very strange relationship, because we did spend so much time together that's not like that I've never experienced as a documentary maker before.
Mm-hmm.
And we developed a friendship, and strangely enough, I've been told that she's also a very good actress, and I agree. She's someone who was very like perceptible to the camera and very cooperative and
very natural as well.
Yeah, and she felt strangely comfortable. Like I was terribly surprised that it didn't take a long time for her to open up but I've told this story many times over, but it became a strange, this sisterly relationship where, when you're making a portrait documentary, then you live and breathe the life of that character for all the time that you're documenting them. And for me, it was close to 2 years. So every morning I would wake up and I would think, how is she doing? Do I need to keep my hand on, do I need to put my finger on the pulse and check what's up with her and so on? So it became so immersive as a relationship between the filmmaker and the character can become. And it did lead to a point where you're constantly trying to keep an eye on what's going on in her life, what's relevant, how does it affect the story, and so on. And we did end up in a few difficult situations as well. And I remember her crying once in front of the camera and then just asking me, like, are you here as a friend or are you here to work? And I just looked at her and I said, I don't know anymore. I don't know anymore, but is there a difference? I'm here because I care. And after, I think the most interesting part of this is after we finished the film, the process of independence that we needed from each other to separate after you've created something together. And we were very strangely codependent on each other in this process of filmmaking, but also that once it's done, then I think it's very important to find that moment of separation as well, of kind of recreating your own life without that person being the center of it. And that's what we went through.
Yeah. Very, very good point. Thank you, Marta, really. And I come back to you, Teona, because in the beginning I said, and time is flying because I'm really enjoying all these interventions. 2017, you've been the director selected for the program, Voices of Women, right? You went to Sydney with a film, which one was it? Called the one.
Had no name.
Yeah, exactly. I just couldn't recall the title. And so tell us about your experience there, but not only how much good time you had and how well you connected to your peers and the parties, but I recall we've been talking and you said that also for yourself to realize that you want to be an outspoken director about gender issues, or let's say widely talk about stereotypes, become member of EWA, contribute when you can and as you can. We are not creating anything that has to be along the line of a blockbuster, but really having this team spirit and exchanging, giving some knowledge to those that don't have access to all those platforms that exist. You said that it also happened for you while being in Sydney, that you understood you have a take on all that. And I find this extremely interesting to hear for all the rest.
You're totally right. The thing is that when you work in a predominantly male industry in the Balkans, you learn to function alone. I learned how to function with my sister and my brother, and it was sort of like a very closed universe. And it's been so hard to succeed, to make our films, that I never looked at myself outside of this little universum that we created for ourselves. Going to Sydney, the first shock was talking to these Australian and New Zealand women directors, and I realized how much ahead they are in terms of us in Europe, how free they are in terms of they don't deal with the same issues that I've been dealing with all of my life, that have imprisoned me and sort of overwhelmed me. And then being part of the program, and I'm not saying just because you guys are here, it sort of gave me direction. I said, oh my God, why am I functioning alone? Why I have a, well, I have also a responsibility to sort of be more active and more outspoken. And I simply understood that together we are stronger. And that I must stop closing myself in and sort of open up to the rest of the world and the rest of the filmmakers. And it was it was a very liberating experience for me. So thank you for that. And it happened in Sydney, really. So I think I was clear, no?
I think so.
Yes.
That made me thought of A Force of Habit, the film that we have here, because I don't know if you want to react to that, you don't have to, but I felt there is also this kind of standing together and finding a common voice to face and gradually probably combat all those issues that's coming across in your film.
Yes, sure. Thank you for all of your really inspiring talks. It's been kind of like going it all through again. So yes, it's really unusual project in many ways. So it's a feature film directed by 7 directors, and don't ask me how it happened. It just happened.
That's another masterclass.
Yes.
It's pretty
yeah, and I think it was more, at least for me, it was like more than a film, like really from the beginning. And I think the whole point of like getting it done was that we needed to have all of us together in the first place. Like we are dealing with such a big questions and such a big issue that none of us could have done it by ourselves, like emotionally, and also it couldn't ever be such a strong process. And I remember, I think this is something to tell, is that it's already 4 years back when we get together and sort of had this urge that we just need to do something for the question that we are all the time talking, that even though we think that we are educated and learned and as equal persons coming from the most equal country in the whole planet, we are still facing this microaggression and discrimination and harassment and all this like day after day. And how is that possible that we all seems to know that it's happening, but it's not changing? And we just get together. We called the people that we wanted to work and thought that, okay, do you have these experiences? Would you like to join this project? We don't know still what it is, but we need to do something about it. And everyone we called was like, thank you for calling. And I have been waiting this. So I think it was the whole core of everything. So we kind of like created a group of people that we felt safe in the first place, and we felt that we are free to talk of things that we seems to see all the time, but we don't have really a form or a shape or something. Yeah.
That's what I think Alessia, who has joined us here, and we often talk about it. This is really important to understand that you are in a safe environment and you don't have to be like pushing for anything, but rather really concentrating, finding the right way, and then brick by brick trying to change, whatever is possible. And we've talked a lot about the past and from where all this is coming in different cultures. I don't want to root that only to Balkan, though of course Teona has a very natural angle there. But I also thought maybe, Sandra, of you, because in your documentary Call Me BABU, you are actually sharing a knowledge for some of us that we don't know about, let's say, babysitters, right? BABUs. So could you briefly maybe tell us your fascination with your story, the definition of the BABU, and how you tried to dig this out? Unmute.
Unmute. So is it good now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hi. It's great to hear all your stories, and I really want to hear more of you, but I will tell a little bit about BABU. It's a word of an Indonesian nanny, and the story is about her. And it's between 1939 and 1949. It's placed in a former colony of Dutch Indonesia. I think a lot of European countries had colonies. And the thing what struck me was that in our history, she was not known. And she was a very important woman in this story, because she was the nanny of all the Dutch kids. And so everybody has memories about her, but I couldn't find anything in our history about her. And I think now at this moment, and I think it's very important, that we are all together and we have to connect. And I think this Indonesian nannies, and I think it's for a lot of other nannies as well, they were kind of the bridge between two different cultures. So they were from Indonesian background, and they take care of the Dutch kids in the colony. But all the kids that I spoke, they are very heartbroken when they talk about her. And through her, they fell in love with her culture because of the food and the smells and the way she was taking care of them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a beautiful way, to connect to another culture. And so I thought, why can I find in literature or in films or whatever in the history, I don't think there's nothing written or filmed about her. So I really felt kind of responsible to give her role a voice. And so I was looking for images in archives, in home movies of Dutch families who were filming their own family. And I knew that with every kid, there was an Indonesian nanny. So there must be some images of her. And it was very, very difficult to find, because they were kind of the heart of the family, but they're always on the side of the kader. So you saw just a hand feeding a kid, or somebody in the background waiting to take care of this kid in the case it will fall. And suddenly I found one family who had filmed her, and that was the starting point of my research. Yeah.
The rest to be watched on.
Yes, sorry.
Screen. Yeah. Teona, I think I was just looking at my screen, and I just realized actually everyone has participated somehow in this talk, and I would want to have two more voices heard, and maybe go towards the wrapping, even though I would really enjoy having more encounters with you, honestly. And I would like to go to Niaza, if you would, because your film is also different. It's a psychological thriller. It has elements of mystery. And I got to know that you've been in development up to 8 years. Was it so? Like very long preparation process until you entered the production. From where does this fascination come from with placing that such an unusual researcher, like a scientist girl, on that boat, and making her journey so powerful for us as an audience?
It's interesting to hear you talk about characterization and representation, and everybody's experience of being a woman on set. And obviously I've
had a career for the last 10 years working in high-end TV drama in the UK and then in the US, working with moderately high budgets. You know, I think the statistic in the US is once you go over $3 million an hour, the number of directors falls to 4%. So most of the time when I walk on set, the people with whom I'm collaborating have never collaborated with a female director before. It's annoying. It's really annoying. And Teona, my heart breaks when I hear you say that going to Australia felt like a liberation, and it felt like the Australian film directors were so much freer, because there's only 17%, according to Screen Australia, only 17% of active film directors are female. So it's like, this is just tiny. It's tiny. And we're still fighting an uphill battle. And I still feel like Sisyphus rolling that stone up the hill every bloody time. And it gets boring. I get bored. I get bored being on set, hearing the same shit on a different day. And I get bored by the fact that so many of the men that I work with are completely innocent and ignorant of it. And I don't know how we have been talking about this for 200 years, since the birth of the Industrial Revolution, when you know, this sort of crystallization of roles started to come into effect, and then certainly since the end of the Second World War, when it became, you know, this kind of valorization of the nuclear family and women being withdrawn from the public sphere. Why are we still talking about it? Why is it still an issue? I am really passionate about this, and I'm angry about it. I'm angry about it because I've had to deal with it my whole career. I mean, I remember in 2012, an agent from CAA, from the American agency, came to me and said, we'd love to represent you, but obviously only for children's dramas or rom-coms because you're a woman. Or that person is gone and no longer at CAA, and obviously I said no. And you know, people saying to me, I remember a producer at the BBC saying to me, I believe you've done a really, really good job on that drama. Congratulations. I'm so delighted because we hired a woman last year and it didn't work out. It's like, this has just been so long. And every time I walk on set, it happens again. And it's so annoying. And I see it happening to young actors, and I see it happening to young cinematographers, and I see it happening to any time a woman steps into a sphere that's traditionally masculine, on films in particular, because our track record is abysmal. It's abysmal. And in Ireland, 16% of active directors are female. It's like the statistics are awful. And what I wanted to do with Sea Fever, the 8 years that's ridiculous. It's like it was 8 years, but it's not really 8 years. It's, you know, 8 years since I delivered a first draft to the Irish Film Board, and they went, oh, this is interesting. And then I had to go away and make a living. And nobody was offering me money to make the film. So I went away for 11 out of 12 months to go away and make a living elsewhere other than in Ireland. I think Teona is absolutely right. There is a small number of boys that you know, become elevated very fast, and that's it. So I hadn't, when I made Sea Fever, I hadn't worked in Ireland in 11 years. And I won 2 BAFTAs. I won a lot of international awards. I'm working at a really high level in the US, because it was easier elsewhere than in the more traditional patriarchal culture from which I come. So it was in that context then. So it was 8 years, but like a month here, and then I'd go and do another project, and then a month there. So not really 8 years. But what I wanted to do with the film then was, and this was a point that I was trying to make yesterday as well, was I feel it's so important for us to articulate our humanity, to articulate our strength and our complexity and our inner conflict by emphasizing our humanity. I think that it was important for me in the film to have a female protagonist as part of a crew. The story is about 7 people, and 7 people in the story, and 4 of them are women and 3 of them are men, because that's what the world is like. And I remember the producer saying to me early on in the development process, because the protagonist in my story is neurodivergent, she's on the autism spectrum, and so it's very difficult for her. She's very clever, but it's very difficult for her to hear nuance. It's very difficult for her to hear subtext and to connect with people emotionally on that basis. And women are discriminated against on a much higher level
Yes.
when they are neurodivergent, because we're expected to be support humans. We're expected to be kind and considerate in a way that boys aren't generally. It's not as invalidating if a boy's on the spectrum as a girl. And actually, consequently, interestingly, women are underdiagnosed with neurodivergence. But anyway, so he said to me, well, one other way that you could enhance her isolation is if she's the only woman on the boat. And I thought, this is the same thing again. We see this over and over and over again in cinema, and over again in the way that people try to articulate female experiences. Let's problematize her femaleness. Let's make the fact of her femaleness the problem in the story. And I actively rebel against that. I actively rebel against the idea that my femaleness is a problem, that your femaleness is a problem. No, it isn't. We are fully functioning, talented, complex, difficult, easy, happy, miserable humans. And it's really
can I come in on that point, because that moves me very much, and this been voiced yesterday. You've all complimented so much the films you've done today, and I think it's blending really well with Teona sharing her views and capturing her moments of working and the complexities she faced, but she also overcomes very successfully, I shall say. And as humanity and us being humans been mentioned really often, I'm looking at Malou now, who's directed A Normal Family. And I think in that film, I got a lot of positive message in the end, even though if you travel through a real mosaic of what's happening for parents, for children in your film. Of course, you are very close to the younger sister who really needs to constantly ask the question, who's the father and who's the mother, and where does her parental bond finish and maybe the new one starts. I felt that you really brought a lot of hope in your film. And there's been a lot of, it was a process, but there's the hope, and this hope is not artificial. It really it comes out of action. It comes out of a single decision your characters are taking. It really stayed very positively with me. So maybe you tell us very briefly, as we're out of time, something, and then I thank you all, we all thank Teona, and we can wrap.
I'm happy you saw and experienced that hope. I think that is important to me, although I also see there's also a lot of, I've also experienced a lot of frustrations, and I recognize what a lot of you are saying about that, but I think that I really try to work with that hope somehow, that I find it important for myself to find where is the hopefulness. And I think with this story, because it's based on something I've experienced 20 years ago, where my dad transitioned from man to woman, I experienced it in a very different time where this wasn't happening, and internet was barely there. So people didn't know at all what this was, and we were very alone in it, and like no one knew how to address it. So we also didn't know how to address it, and we're very confused about whether you can still be a dad or a parent when you transition from man to woman. And we found a way to deal with it, and maybe the first 15 years things stayed the same, and suddenly in 5 years everything completely changed. Like whenever I would tell people about it, that my dad is a woman, people were like, yeah, I also know someone who like is transgender or something. I was like, really? And because it just changed, and suddenly Caitlyn Jenner was on the cover of Vogue, and not to say that then everything is perfect. It's not at all. We just started that conversation, and things are only starting to develop. But at least like there was some sort of development in 20 years, and suddenly when I started getting ready to make this film, people were responding really positively, or were kind of like emotionally kind of responsive to it, where just 5 years earlier people didn't know what to say. So yes. I think there was something about that experience where I was like, okay, there is something where slowly, very, very, very slowly, we do, like, at least it's dangerous to say move forward, but at least there is some kind of change in both how we address like minorities, and of course just what kind of stories we can tell about being anything else than a white cis male that is like straight and has all the experiences that we've been watching on cinema for the past 100 years and reading about in books. And suddenly it's like, there is space, but we constantly have to work in order to create more space for telling those stories, I think. So yeah,
absolutely. And you finish really on this diversity, right? On this also the cultural diversity to maneuver away only from the topics of individual films that we have here, and also the gender agenda or equality agenda, whatever we call it, is part of cultural diversity. And that is the culture that needs to play somehow the really crucial role in challenging the stereotype and then somehow promoting it on a societal level, the change that will be needed. So I would like to finish with this and to thank Teona very much, of course, for your time and for your good energy of being here with us, but totally equally to thank all of you, all the filmmakers, because it's been very interesting for us. I dare saying also for the team of European Film Promotion, this is really putting the whole puzzle together with your faces, having these films now screened in Sydney and having your very solid, emotional, concrete feedback on your work and the comments that really shaped it up. And if you will be interested to stay in touch with us as the network, we will be totally delighted to be connected and finding a way for future encounters. So thank you very much. And I let you, Andreas, rob the show.
Nothing I can add. I'm really so happy. I'm very, very grateful that you all joined. And thank you so much, Teona, for sharing your experiences and your perspectives. And I didn't know that about Sydney, so that was very nice to hear. And thank you so much, Tamara, for guiding us through all these wonderful films and stories. Thank you all. I'm not melancholic because
Teona wants to say something.
I'm sorry.
I hope to see you all again in life. Yeah, Teona.
I just want to add something because you know what Sandra said about BABU. It's amazing to be able to rewrite history. And with this film about your BABU, you are helping rewrite history. And it is about confidence. It's about rewriting history, and it is about refusing refusing the pre-assumed roles we need to play and our characters need to play. Refusing being put in a box. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so
very much.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
See you at one point.
Bye.
Bye.